drag of the ground is holding the wheel straight behind the steering axis. You don't want to end up with the steering axis back here and the contact point in front of it, or it's just an out-of-control shopping cart. So that turns out to be the very important dimension, but you can change the head angle around so long as you maintain this trail. So that's one interesting thing to keep in mind for bike stability, is just maintain about 3/4 of an inch to an inch of trail. Go ahead and use any head angle you want. You can go vertical with a backward fork. But I line that up and see where's the steering axis going to be. And I usually don't want to overlap her feet too far with the front wheel. A little bit of overlap with the front wheel is okay, but too far, then the wheel would hit your shoes sometimes in the tight turns. So we'll put it out here. So the crank, in this case, the crank can be here. The back wheel, I need to move it up. I'm going to use a smaller back wheel. When you level the ground, she's going uphill. There we go. Let her recline a little bit. My table's a little smaller than my daughter's, the problem. But here, I'm going to just scrunch her up so we can get things on the drawing a little better. Then the next thing I look at is where to put the handlebars. So the ergonomics of riding a recumbent are such that you want to have a little bit of looseness in your arms. And so we mark out here, where is the wrist? And about 2 inches behind the wrist is where we're going to try to arrange the grips of the handlebars. So again, I'm going to look at the steering axis. If the handlebars will be on the steering axis, I'll put a backward stem on it maybe. Or if there was no stem, I would tilt the steering axis like this. So I'm paying attention to where is the steering axis compared to the rest of the bike. We could also easily, with the CAD system, rearrange it and make it a mid-wheel drive like this driftwood recumbent. Put the steering axis up here. So if I had above my leg handlebars on that bike, I could be just doing it like this. But basically the easy design technique is just build a cardboard cutout of yourself, lay out a ground line, put the thing above the ground where you like it, cut out some wheels or use your own real wheels and just lay them down and start looking at these dimensions. Then the other thing I like to look at is where is the chain line going to be. So now if this fishing rod will represent the chain coming off this chain ring to drive the bike, it's going to go across the top of the gear on the back. And so I start looking at where the chain line is going to be. Well, it's not going to work with a straight chain line. She'll need a higher seat to be above the chain. So I usually like to make just one straight shot with the chain line, but you can see on the driftwood bike I wasn't able to do that. In that bike I'm lifting the chain up and down, getting it over the front wheel, and sometimes you have to do that on different recumbents. So that's kind of the little setup secrets I've been figuring out over time, is trying to make it easy, like it's a sketch you just quickly lay out and you're moving it around, even easier than drawing on paper. And getting everything in position. And then the fun part is, the next thing you do is you just bring the wood out and you plop it right on top of there. And you start positioning the wood and the parts and the lines. And you just mark the wood. I do very little measuring. I just look and mark, and then I go cut. And then I bring it back and dry fit it, put it together. I tack it together different ways. Lots of times if I'm using wood, I'll use screws or bolts because I can pull it back out again. I very rarely use glue because I may have commitment issues, and glue is a little bit permanent. So my bikes get a little loose and creaky, and then I readjust them. Let's see. Maybe I can show you a couple of features on the driftwood bike. So it's a pretty simple bike. Turn it around. I got lucky when I found this piece of driftwood. because it had a knot hole in just the right place, where when I drilled the hole through for the headset, it was right where I wanted it, and it was at a nice angle. So I was really lucky. I just flattened out the sides here to put the plywood wheel space and drill a hole through to fit the axle of the back wheel. Drilled this hole for the bottom bracket. So just again, just like that block of wood, it's just threaded steel through wood. There's no steel along here or here. Just little connectors. I just wanted a foldable seat. It's got a plywood seat with a little block of wood to hold it straight. And then the chain line. Like I said, the chain line got a little bit complex, but it's kind of nice to keep it as straight as you can so that it's efficient. If you're wrapping the chain back and forth around a lot of different cogs, there's a lot of force and drag on those cogs, and it eats up a lot of your energy. So then I use high-tech things like orange juice lids as something to keep the chain on. And U-bolts, just drill through the fork to hold it on. It's just really easy to kludge these things together and to have a really fun working bike. And then if you can keep changing it around, and if you get something you really like, then you get out the welder and you sink everything into place. Let's pull out my steel bike. One of the first homemade bikes I saw that really inspired me was a little bit like this one. It was bigger. It was maybe a 20-inch version. This is a 12-inch wheel version. But you can see it's just a kid bike, just plain and simple. And then the steel boom from a donor bike just welded on. I had a little cheap MIG welder, wire tape. It's just like you mark the screw with plasma molten metal hot glue and you splatter it on pretty easy. This bike handles well. I put an IKEA chair rail on and part of an office chair sawed down to make a resemblance seat. And then I use this removable back. When the little kids ride it, their butts are up here. And when the adults ride it, they put it back like this. But it's very easy and very fun bike. Afterwards, you guys can try it. And one other thing I like doing is making these scooters. So it's just the front end of a mountain bike and the back end of a Razor scooter and a couple of welds. So pretty easy and very fun, very controlled compared to the regular Razor scooter. Maybe on the overhead I'll show you a couple pictures of the other bikes. Then you've seen the driftwood bike, but another fun genre was this thing of using, I end up with the front end of the Razor scooter left over. So we start making these little scooter bikes that are the front end of a Razor scooter on a 2x4 with plywood wheel holders and the chain just going straight back. And they're a lot of fun. So then I also started making some compact bikes, just cutting up old 10 speeds and welding them smaller and smaller, and so then they would fit in the trunk of the car better. That 2x4 bike led to the ski bike, and so the ski bike has a ski stuck into a bedpost. And so this is a bedpost and a couple of steel tubes welded together. And it's really the back end of a bike with no front triangle. The head tube goes right through the seat of the bedpost. And then that got me interested in trying to make some adjustable geometry bikes. So this adjustable head bike has two steel plates and a bolt through it. And so you can rock the head angle back and forth to check out different head angles while you're riding. So it's even more than this head system. You can just try it on the fly and then bolt it in new positions. And that worked out pretty well. You can see with the wedge in the picture right below it. that I would just wedge that block of wood in when I find a nice angle I like.